Welcome back and thanks for tuning in to East Wing Woodworking. Unfortunately, it's been a few months since my last video due to the fact I've been extremely busy with my full-time job, and fortunately, due to a lot of projects I needed to get out before the holiday season. All that being said, I'm truly thankful for all the woodworking projects I've been able to do. My woodworking business has grown tremendously, and the extra income and exposure that comes along with it has been a real blessing. This holiday season, we managed to sell a bunch of custom charcuterie boards with both epoxy and wooden inlays, our ever so popular plate stands, cutting boards, catch-all trays, and our custom cigar ashtrays. In today's video, we're going to highlight one of my charcuterie board projects for a close friend of mine. So please follow along as I walk you through the step-by-step process of making these two amazing custom charcuterie boards. And as always, if you're enjoying this content, please smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again for tuning in to East Wing Woodworking. Now let's get started. East Wing Woodworking. For this video, I thought it'd be a good idea to walk you through the software portion of the project. As you know, my CNC machine is a Shapeoko Pro XXL manufactured by Carbide 3D, and the software I use is Carbide Create Pro. So what I've done here is utilize a charcuterie board shape that my friend and I agreed upon prior to beginning this project. The logo, the words, Inspired Psalm, I copied from my buddy's girlfriend's website and imported it into the software. The first thing we need to do is use the software centering tool to align the logo in the center of the board. The next step is to create a pocket toolpath to cut out the logo. For this operation, I'm choosing a 1/32 inch downcut bit with a total pocket depth of 0.094 inches, a plunge rate of 8, a feed rate of 30 IPM, and 18,000 RPM bit speed. This size bit will be perfect to cut out the smaller detailed portion of the letters. I want to point out that the blue lines represent the actual tool path. Looking closely, you can see that there's certain parts of each letter that are too small for the tool to fit. What we'll need to do to correct this is to modify or edit the vectors to create an area big enough for the tool to cut out this part of the logo. First, we highlight the logo and select the editing tool. Here we will start to widen and modify the vectors to create enough room for the tool to fit and complete the pocket. It's a pretty tedious process and takes a little bit of time, but overall, it's not difficult to do. Here, I've sped up the process to show you how after I modify each letter, I go back to see if I created enough room for the bit to fit and create the desired result. The plan is once I pocket out the logo, I will then fill it with the appropriate colored epoxy. Here, I run a quick simulation to make sure that my edits have worked and see a preview of how it might turn out. Just a quick reminder, I've made this style charcuterie board before, and if you look closely, I've already have toolpaths set up in this program. What I'm going to do here is re-enable them and make sure that I have the appropriate tools selected with the proper feeds and speeds for each one. The second toolpath is the hole in the handle of the board. I'm selecting a 1/4 inch downcut bit with a step over of 1/8 of an inch and a 0.094 inch depth per pass. My plunge rate is set at an 8 and my feed rate is set at 60 inches a minute. My third and final toolpath is a contour toolpath, set with an offset to the outside right. Now I'm going to use the same 1/4 inch bit and maintain the same feeds and speeds as I did in the prior operation. The next board I decided to get a bit creative and form it into the shape of a painter's palette. Now my friend who hired me to make these boards for his girlfriend, she owns and operates an art studio in Southern California called Inspired Art Wine. Inspired is the only one-stop entertainment spot for both art and wine enthusiasts in Southern California. They are an art studio, wine bar, and gallery paired with top-notch instructors, and since 2016, they've managed to teach over 30,000 students. They provide art classes and wine classes for private students, corporate events, private parties, and host fundraisers for charities. If you're ever in Southern California or happen to live here already, go check them out. I will put their contact information and a link to their website in the description below. Selecting the best piece of wood is key when making charcuterie boards. However, wood is not perfect, and sometimes you have to make do with what you have and figure out a workaround. In this case, one side of the board came with a knot, and I'm going to use CA glue to fill it in. Now once it dries, I'll sand it, and after the board is finished, this imperfection will not be an issue. Now that we have the board mounted and the machine zeroed, we can start cutting the logo. Now that the logo is complete, our next step is filling the pocket with water-based polyurethane. Now this is going to keep the color we add to the epoxy from getting absorbed by the surrounding grain. Pro tip for you. When doing fine detail epoxy inlay, use a syringe with a fine tip. This will ensure that you get the epoxy in all the small places and avoid any bubbles from forming. Now it's time to cut the hole in the handle. Next, we cut the shape of the board. For the board shaped like a color palette, I didn't have a piece of walnut that was wide enough to do the job, so we're over here at the table saw cutting a couple pieces that we'll glue together to give us the size we need. After we remove this piece from the clamps, we'll take a chisel to remove the excess glue. And just like in the prior operation, once we have this board mounted, the first step is to pocket out the logo. Here we are cutting out the thumb hole, and finally, we cut the shape of the board. After we remove our project from the clamps, we'll then use the oscillating tool to cut the tabs and separate the finished piece from the rest of the wood. Next, we'll take this piece over to the oscillating sander to smooth out its final shape. Again, we'll add some water-based polyurethane before we pour the epoxy. Once the epoxy is dried, we'll do some sanding with 80 grit sandpaper to knock off the excess epoxy. And finally, we'll take both pieces over to the router table to round over the edges. All right, into the home stretch now with the final part of the operation, sanding and finishing. I have to admit that this is my favorite part of every project. Here, I'm using 100% food grade mineral oil. It really brings out the color of the epoxy and the wood, especially when using walnut. It really makes the grain pop. Well, there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Now, please don't forget to smash that like button, and if you'd like to see more of this type of content, please subscribe. Take care, and see you next time on East Wing Woodworking.